Well, hello.
Oi! Oi!
Hey,
How are you?
You see my Garmin? Holy macros, that big enough?
Garmin Fishing. Just in case anybody's wondering, Garmin Fishing. You get it all right here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna stay like this the whole live stream. I'm not gonna show my face at all.
Well, obviously, you're getting a kickback from Garmin. We get it. We understand. That's cool. That's
Buddy,
fine. I have no issue.
hey, as long as they pay me in US dollars, buddy, I'm good. Okay, no matter how much that would be.
Well,
sure.
Tonight I'm going a different direction, buddy.
There's the kickback. Free motor bikes. You know what I'm saying? I get you.
Welcome everybody to another Tuesday night. Now I know a lot of you are torn. I know I was too, between watching this and watching the first game of Major League Baseball playoffs featuring our very own Toronto Blue Jays. I know it's a tough choice.
They can put both on.
Choice.
This is the internet. You put the computer over here and you put your TV over there. You can watch them both, buddy. Multitasking. It's a world of multitasking right now.
Well, I can't do that. I'm on air. How can I watch them both?
You could watch it on your phone right now. Hello. Oh, look at that. Hey, look at you.
Okay. I got personally, I got a lot to talk about. I know you do too tonight. But before we get to any of that good stuff, and I have reams, by the way. I got paper here I haven't even used yet. You too. All right. So before we get to that, I just want to talk about. Well, no. First of all, let me tell folks that we've got the usual Q&A coming up at the end of the program. I know a lot. Last week we're wondering if we were going to go to that. It all depends on how long or short the program is, as to how much Q&A we do at the end. So
might be a more Q&A today because we lost a guest. So that might add. You know what I mean?
We have two. One got replaced and one hasn't been replaced. So I'm going to go over that in a minute. We have two guests today that stiffed us. Shouldn't say that because both for reasons.
Exactly.
But I want to address the issue that happened this weekend on fishingcanada.com because it was a catastrophe, and we take it very seriously here. We had some, and it was due to traffic. But the contest part of Canada.com kind of went a little funky on us this weekend, and we had some issues, and I know some of you were really worried as to what was going on, and I guess justifiably so. However, I just want to reassure all of you out there that are loyal and faithful followers of the brand that we would never ever do anything that is not 100% on the up and up for the fans, for our advertisers, and certainly for the contest itself. So some of you were not able to get on this weekend, and from what I understand, our crack team there has made sure that, and I could be wrong. I know Jordan's probably going to jump all over this, but I'm pretty sure that anybody who was not able to get on, we've identified and we've rectified the problems. If not, let us know. That's all I can say. But
let me add in though, Ange. Let me please add this in that is that we have a very small crew, and our entire crew has the weekends off. So if a problem comes in and you're not getting it solved by Friday night at 2 a.m, okay, well, we might not have seen, nobody in there might have seen this problem, this issue, whatever. We might not even know what's happening. We try to know what's happening. We try to stay up on it. But sometimes things happen and people are away, et cetera, et cetera. So don't slag our crew. Don't give everybody shit because because you can't get a ballot in. Please, I mean, give us a chance. Give our team a chance because we're not this mega. We're not Google. We're not Facebook. We're very small.
We'd like to be. I think we are. But our thanks to Calvin Pennell, one of our followers, that pointed it out to me personally. He communicated with me on the weekend, and I was able to get a hold of Jordan and others and Mark and whatnot to see what the hell was going on. But once again, we apologize. It wasn't intentional, and it did not affect most people. So fortunately for us, it was a small number that were affected by it. And it's good. It's fixed. We're back. So don't panic when things like that happen. Chances are real good. We're on it, or we'll be on it shortly and get you all fixed up. Having said all that, you guys are all as important to us as every single member out there. There isn't any that are less or more. Whether you got 1,600 ballots in the box or one ballot in the box, to us, you're all important. So each and every one of you matter. And it's important that you reach out to us, and we'll see what
I
we can
bet you say that to all the girls, don't you?
I try. No, stop it. Had a wonderful. Hey, I was out having lunch today.
No,
I was out having lunch. It was like
that's where you were all day while I was slaving in here.
Oh yeah, you were slaving. Yeah. That's why you weren't here by 10 o'clock. You were still at home in bed.
Wow.
We won't talk about that. I had lunch today.
I should put a 13-hour day in every day, right? That's what you're thinking.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Had lunch today with the radio. I don't know where you're going with that. Had lunch today with the Radio World group.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very refreshing. Uncle Jack was there. Haven't had lunch with him in eons, and the entire marketing group were there, including Angelo, the head cheese of the company.
Nice. Yeah. How's Ange doing? Is he doing okay?
I hadn't seen him in quite some time.
Yeah, me neither.
Adam and Lauren and Jack and Ange, and it was
Lauren, our boy. You gotta love Lauren, man. That guy. You ask him a question, a technical question. In case anybody has technical questions, you deal with Radio World, and you have an issue with your fish planners and any electronic. Lauren is the dude right there. He's amazing.
So what else have I got? So I said there was 2 cancellations. So we were supposed to have because by the way, we're supposed to remind folks at this point to make sure they subscribe to and all that stuff. Do you want to take care of that?
But of course, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to Fishing Canada, etc. But also remember that tomorrow is our next Mercury draw too. We have to remind them of that. So you want to make sure you get as many ballots as you possibly can. Wait till the end of this piece because you're going to get your bonus ballots, your bonus codes, and all that. So remember, please help us in the subscription and the YouTube, as it says right here. Click on the bell to subscribe, enable notifications. Man, we got a live video. So that would help us a lot. We always ask and we always reach out for that, but we sincerely mean it, and we'd like to have that participation. Great.
And I don't want to put added pressure on anybody, but we are getting to the end of both the current contests, and that is the Mercury 2.5 giveaway will end in November. So we've only got a couple more motors to go. We got the October and the November motor, and the Princecraft boat motor trailer is coming up, right?
When is that at the end of that guy?
December 15th.
Okay.
So without adding pressure to any, and we're all under constant pressure, but I just want to remind you, because there's some people who are there and putting ballots in both those draws every 24 hours. You need to do the same. It's free. Everybody has an opportunity.
And by the way, just to let everybody know, we are working on new contests as we speak. So don't ever kid yourself. Just because the Mercury ones might slow down a little bit, maybe we'll do another Mercury guy. If we can get a hold of Mercury to do that, it'd be great. If we can work something out, but we have other stuff in the making right now that you're going to be happy with. Very happy.
So okay, so here's Angelo, you're right.
Look at his picture.
I love him. I love the guy. Even if it's not his picture, for putting a picture like that up, I love him. I do. I have a 97 Fat Boy. Yeah.
And he's ridden it 97 times, maybe. If he's
and the Fat Boy's ridden the Fat Boy a few times.
I wouldn't say that. But
no, you would so. So I said we have 2 cancellations today, and Pete wasn't aware of one of them, maybe, but the first cancellation we had was for Minister Yakubuski, who was going to be on the program today to talk to us about the cormorant call. And the reason that was important is because the cormorant call poll that we put out for the last week ended today at 1 o'clock. So we thought it'd be kind of cool if we had the minister on to show the results of the poll, and then he could, we could debate it with him, I suppose, or discuss it at least. And the question of the poll, if you didn't get a chance to enter it, was, are you for or against the cormorant cull? And so the minister canceled on us, and we thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? It was like last minute. Like, how do you replace that? Well, not only did we replace it, we went over and above. Peter?
We have on our list of guests tonight, probably as professional a cormorant color as there ever was. How's that?
Exactly.
How's that sound to you? This guy, he is okay. It's a different situation than what we're all in, but it's not. It's the same thing, but it's a little different. This has been an ongoing thing for a while, and this guest of ours coming up is going to be able to enlighten us a lot on the procedures and how it's going and how many birds are still left over. More importantly, so.
And the other cancellation we have is Antonio, who was introduced last week on the program, who is going to be on every week with the fish de jour. He was going to be on tonight to show us how to sharpen a fillet knife, which he said, by the way, on this very program. Now, this is an accomplished chef. He's won all kinds of awards. He's the chef for celebrities here in Canada. He works in the film industry, and all the celebrities that come into Canada to shoot films, they all request Antonio to be their chef. So he's right up there on the scale. But he said to us here on this program, the most important part about preparing fish is the blade on your fillet knife. So tonight he was going to come on and show us how to keep that blade sharpened, which I would have loved to have learned.
Yeah, I requested it, and he said that last. I said, "How about?" It was like the number one, and it would be a perfect way to start a whole series of segments with him. Right? It'd be the way you start out with cleaning them, and then we'll go to cooking them. But unfortunately,
he had something come up, and we'll talk about it a little later on in the program. But he will not be here. So there's our two cancellations. But we have all kinds of great guests, anyways, and not only that, but Pete and I are here. I mean, what more do you want? Let's be honest about it.
That's right. By the way, your buddy rides an 08 FLHX. Herman.
Oh, nice. An 08. Beautiful.
So,
all right, here we go. First things first, let's have a look at this poll. What were the results of the poll? The question was, are you against or for the call?
Woo!
There you go.
You go. I'd really like to know. I'm sure maybe some of them are right here in the comment section. Maybe those people that actually are against the call, if you put in a little point as to why you're against the call, I'd like to hear it, because I mean, with that strong a majority for the call, I mean, we all know the reasons that we want the call to happen, including myself. And I believe Angelo's done the same. He would have voted yes for the call too. I'm going to say that he did, but I know I would have. I'd like to hear the against, just to hear that small percentage of what the reasoning is.
And for those of you who have absolutely no idea what that question was about, let me fill you in. Hopefully there are not that many of you out there.
No, come on. This is our audience. These are smart peeps. Come on.
But they're from all over the country. Even mine.
BC aren't as smart as Quebec? Huh? So you're saying the BC people aren't as smart as Quebec, or vice versa? Or?
No, I did not say that, nor will I even acknowledge that you said that.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I don't do that.
From all over the country. They're all smart.
I know you're pushing.
Smart. I'm not pushing.
So it's been over the last 4 or 5 years. We've been, in my opinion, this is an opinion only, we've been overrun by cormorants. Cormorants are those funny-looking, long-necked, skinny little winged, black-bodied, raven kind of looking, weird aquatic bird that
quite the description.
roosts in these totally naked trees. That's how you know it's a cormorant, folks, because where it goes, the trees die. They roost in totally naked trees that once used to be green that are no longer. And they do the same to land, vegetation, and the fisheries. Well, they've gotten out of control. So it's been a political hot potato for the last little while.
The reason they're out of control, first off, the reason they're out of control is because they're a protected species. Go ahead. Sorry.
Of course. Right. And so some people in the outdoors community have said for years, hey, we got to do something. We got to curb this growth because they're growing exponentially. They're taking over beautiful pieces of landscape that are just, and they're destroyed forever. Wherever these birds roost and nest, gone.
Annihilation.
It's like a nuclear fallout.
Yeah, good point. That's exactly what it looks like.
It's nuclear fallout. Now, Pete and I have been seeing this for years in remote parts of the country. And, you watch it and you go back the following year and it's worse and worse. Well, they've been moving to the south, and now, I mean, they decimated. There's a lot of islands in the Toronto area that used to be beautiful, green, lush, little specks of land in the middle of water are now just a great piece of dust.
Do you remember that one we did the carp piece on? That
Oh,
cormorant infested.
oh,
It was cormorants and seagulls all over this piece of land, and all you could smell was bird crap, and there wasn't a leaf on any of the trees. It was like a nuclear site, a hazard
oh,
site.
yeah.
It was like Mad Max movie. It's
Oh,
unreal.
what's been happening is that every minister of natural resources in this province, and I'm sure this is not just happening here, although this is where the hotbed is, but every minister of natural resources in this province, when they first come to office, one of the things that they see is this stack of complaints on their desk about cormorants and what are we going to do? And they say, well, yeah, of course, the problem. Let's fix it. We'll fix it. Well, as soon as they go to fix it, it's a political backlash.
Yeah.
Right? Their world comes crumbling in on them. They say, and I'm talking to politicians now, they say, whoa, I can't touch that. And nobody's willing to touch it. Well, guess what? Minister Yakubuski, the current Minister of Natural Resources, said, I will risk my reputation. I will look at it. And I may be able to put a call in place. And he did. And to his credit, that call started this September, this month.
Yep.
And you know, it's not a perfect world. It's certainly not a perfect world. And now we're starting to see complaints about dead carcasses. Well, one of the things that's been put in place was, and Pete, you know maybe a little bit more about this, when you do shoot one of these birds, you've got to be responsible to dispose of it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the, that's a law. If you get caught not doing that, you will be charged. I don't know what the charge is, but you will be. And there's disposal sites. You can bury them on private property, your own private property, or you can access somebody else's private property by asking them if can I bury these birds. There's certain ways of doing it. It's very regimented, very set up well.
So this story, a reason we're setting this whole thing up, because there's a story just released about dead cormorants that are being dumped alongside Aurelia city streets. And so it starts. And I know Calvin, one of our regulars, said, be careful what you wish for, because you know the results might not be as favorable as you want. And so I just want to set the record straight. In as much as I know Pete and I are both for this call, we're certainly not for breaking the law.
Yeah.
And right now, if you leave a cormorant after you've shot it, if you don't dispose of it yourself, you are a criminal. And as I've always said before, criminal acts are criminal. You can't color them. You can't change them. They are what they are. So shooting a cormorant and not disposing of it is, to me, just as bad as not having a call. So all of you out there, be aware of that.
I don't know if Mike has that. I know this is probably springing one on you, Mike, but if you have the picture of that little outlay of birds, that people listening here, it's a strange one to me. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in on this one too, because I do believe it wasn't an ethical hunter doing that, even because a lot of ethical hunters are helping this cull, but they will do it right. And the reason I say that is because, number one, they wouldn't leave a pile of birds roadside and all in one little pile and leave it there. That's making a statement. So somebody had done that, making a statement. Number two, there's 2 boxes of shotgun, 2 empty boxes. They're for shotgun shells. There's no way in this world hunters would do that, because they're now polluting the land with garbage and the birds, right? So somebody brought a point up on our Fishing Canada Facebook page, our fan page, and they thought, what if it's the do-gooders? And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. Because if you think about that, I'm not going to say they did this, but it is a perfect ploy for somebody to either gather birds that maybe hunters left illegally. They could have gathered these birds and said, oh my God, look at this mess. I can't believe they're doing this. They go down to Canadian Tire. They say, hey, what kind of shotgun shells would you use for cormorant hunting? I don't really know. I haven't done it yet. You know what I mean? Okay, good. Throw those shells in the garbage, wherever they do. Take the empty boxes and lay the birds out beside the boxes beside the birds. Think about that one. That's a possibility. There's a repeat of people doing that.
Maybe the first ever maybe the first, certainly on this show, it's the first ever cormorant conspiracy theory.
There it is, right
Okay.
there. Think about it. It's a perfect plan. They can
All right.
crucify us by doing that crap. Now, unfortunately, I might have just opened a can of worms by saying that, and everybody, all the PETA people go, Bowman, thanks so much for that. You're done, dickhead. Well, I'll tell you what, it's just such an easy plan for them to do. So all I'm saying is that ethical hunters, I know hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them, they would not do that. They would not do that. Okay, maybe a redneck might do that. You know what I mean? Some guy, I gotta show the world what I did today, but not an ethical hunter. No way. So
well, let's bring somebody on that knows a thing or two about cormorants, about cormorant culls, about coexisting with them, and what the potential pitfalls would be if they go unchecked. His name is William Clute. He's a good friend of ours. He is from the St. Regis Mohawk tribe in Hogansburg, New York. He's a fishing guide on the St. Lawrence River and tributaries in upstate New York. He's asked us a million times to go fish with him, and we run into him once in a while when we're down in that neck of the woods, but it just hasn't worked out that we can go, one of these days we're going to do it, though, and it's going to be mayhem for sure.
Oh, yeah.
William Clute.
Hey,
guys. How's it going?
Good.
Good, buddy. How about you?
Good.
Good stuff.
First of all, welcome.
Have you listened to so far, Bill, what we were talking about?
Yes, yeah. Listen to everything. Yeah, you guys are spot on. You guys were spot on in just about everything you guys talked about so far on the cormorants. What's going on? What could be happening?
So talk to us about this. I just found out about it that in fact you guys have been trying to curb their growth for a decade with absolutely no success, which concerns.
I've been doing it personally myself and a few of the other members here in the band for the past 12 years. When we finally noticed that these birds were starting to take over the population. What really started for us is the two nesting islands that we had here, where the great blue herons, our native birds here for Canada and the U.S., their nesting sites were overtaking. We stopped seeing the great blue herons, and so we have two islands that you guys have probably fished right by. That the trees and the nesting sites were disappearing. We were wondering why. We've seen a lot of nests. Everybody thought it was herons there, but actually it was the cormorants had come in and taken over the nesting grounds of the blue herons and the white what do you call them there, the egrets and stuff like that we have in the areas. And so we went there to look, and we were like, what's going on with all these trees and all the nests we're missing? And so when we actually drove up to the islands where they're at and looked, we were like, well, what are these birds here? What's going on? And what we were doing in the studies we did through the conservation we have with the band office and stuff like that, we watched them for a few years to see what was going on, what they were doing. The herons and the egrets come in first, and they would set up to lay their eggs and to do their natural thing. And so what was happening is they would have their babies, the baby cranes and stuff like that. They would have the baby blue herons, and the cormorants would come in and actually take over the nests and push the baby blue herons out. And we were finding dead baby blue herons on these islands. And we're like, what's going on? Why is there so many dead baby blue herons? And this is what, from watching them, from studying them, what we found out they would do. They would actually take over the existing heron nests and things like that. So we were finding, like, we'd pull up on the islands and see the trees where the herons were in, and we'd see dead baby herons that, were pushed out. They'd be hanging dead in the tree limbs. They call it the crotches of the tree limbs. You'd find them hanging by their necks because they were pushed out, and we'd find them dead on the ground and things like that.
And why would they? Did you ever find out why they were pushing them out of the? Were they reusing the nest for their own purpose?
Yes, they were reusing the nest for their own purposes.
Wow. So, okay, now I'll explain to the people. A cormorant is, let's say, the size of a big duck. Okay, great blue heron is the size of a friggin' airplane almost. It's so big. So I'm assuming, Bill, that their strength is in numbers. The cormorants, compared to the herons. Is that what it would be? Like, how could that bird take over? A little bird take on this great big bird and get him out of that nest? Is there
Well, most of the great blue herons we've seen, they, the female goes in, she lays her eggs, she's there by herself.
Right.
The cormorants, when they come in, they're together. So it's a pair of cormorants against one bird. So that's the things we've noticed with them and things like that. And the thing with the cormorants is they have no natural predators. Nothing goes, no, like, the ducks, the geese, everything. They have fox, they have coyotes to get their babies, they have raccoons and things like that to get eggs and things like that. The cormorants, because of where they're nesting and basically the environment that they create around themselves, they have no natural predators. So their population is unchecked by nature.
I know one.
Which is totally unusual, Bill. I mean,
right.
you know that better than anybody, right? Nature always has a leveling device, right? There's always a higher level predator, or there's always natural facts that will sort of curb extraordinary growth of any species. Natural phenomena that we don't even understand kind of control. But if this is the case where the cormorant has no natural predators, and we certainly know, those of us who are into the outdoors and love the outdoors know how much damage they cause. This is not something that is unique to us. This has got to be happening right around the globe, because cormorants aren't just a North American thing.
Oh, God.
No, they're all over the world. Yes.
And so my question is, why hasn't somebody done something globally? If these things are so out of control and have absolutely no way of being contained, then I don't understand why this call was, first of all, was way overdue, and secondly, why somebody hasn't come up with a way of taking care of business.
I will say there, I did in my own eyes see a natural predator to cormorants, and that was a seagull, a flock of seagulls, a group of seagulls. I was on the False Duck Islands in Lake Ontario, and a lot of the cormorants there nest on the ground. So everybody thinks that they nest in the tree, but they don't always nest in a tree. Sometimes they'll nest in the ground. And I swear to God, Bill and Angelo, I watched seagulls either eating the eggs out of the cormorant nest or killing the babies and eating the babies. I watched one swallow down a baby cormorant. So that is a natural predator. Somehow, or I don't know how they got onto that, but
that'll take place. That'll take place only after years and years of, like, the cormorants. What happens is, they take over an island, they nest in the trees that's there in the island, and because their poop is toxic poop, it kills everything. And after years, it could take 10 years to kill all the trees, kill all the grass. The trees fall down. They have no choice but to either nest on the ground or fly to another island that has trees and take that over and start nesting that. So yeah, I can see where that happens, but I mean, for that type of situation, I mean, maybe once every 5 to 10 years that happens.
Yeah, and still, all that, a lot less seagulls than there was cormorants too.
Exactly. Seagulls, when they have their babies, might have 2 or 3 babies, maybe 4 babies. Cormorants on a regular that we've seen, because of the fish populations, if it's real healthy, they're having 3, 4, 5 babies at a time. And I mean, if that goes unchecked, I mean, that's why their populations get out of hand so fast.
So how long ago did you guys recognize this, and what, talk to us about the process? Well,
we recognized that it was 12 years ago. And so, we waited a whole 2 seasons to do anything about it. And then we started noticing, the first thing we noticed was our perch populations in our area were going down. We weren't seeing the perch numbers. And, because we didn't have the gobies in this water system at that time. People are talking about gobies, cormorants only eat gobies. No, the cormorants were here and we didn't have gobies, yet they were, the perch population started going. Then we started seeing our juvenile walleye population going on. We weren't catching those smaller walleyes, those pound walleyes, those things like that. We were wondering what was going on when, we used to go in and catch hundreds in a fishing trip and stuff. And so we started seeing the numbers dwindling. Even our bait, the minnows, the shiners, our big shiners that we use for for fishing, we captured them, we saved them for for fishing through the ice in the wintertime and things like that. We use them for bait when we commercial fish for our families and things like that. And we noticed those populations have dwindled right down, I mean, drastically. So that's when we started asking questions of what's going on. And then it just came in line that one day we had seen what was going on at the Heron Islands, and that's when they started it basically started to kickstart things through there.
So what did you guys what was the process? Like you guys said, okay, we got to do something about this. How do we do it? How did that come about? What'd you do?
Right. Well, the fishermen and the local hunters, we got together, we had a few meetings, and then when we came up with the plan, well, okay, do we shoot them? What do we do? And so we went to the tribal council, the band council, and we discussed it with them. And we had the tribal council got in charge. They got in contact with the ministry, the U.S. Department of the Interior and stuff like that to find out what's the laws. At the time, the birds are federally protected. And so they turned around, they told us, but because you're on a sovereign nation territory, they told us, you guys use your own discretion of what you guys want to do, what you want to come up with. And so we discussed it with the councils, and we said, well, we'd like to shoot them, start our own style of call. And so we came up with ways of, we're going to dispose of them properly, what we're going to do with them and things like that. And so, we set up our own protocols. It took a few months, 3 months of meetings with the band councils and the councils to get everything in place. And then they just said, okay, everything's in place. This is what you guys are going to do. Okay, go ahead and do it. And that's when we started doing our spring call. We do it in the spring. We try to do it in the spring before they nest up.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody just said on here, by the way, they said they should do it in the spring, not the fall, so they get them before they start nesting, right? The call needs to start in the spring when they're laying their eggs, which is a brilliant idea. However, I think the problem with that is that it would be difficult because it would then become a hunt season on its own. And I think by having it in the fall, the provincial government kind of thought it'll be the easiest way of doing it because we're already in a hunting season. We already have hunters out there, and this is just an add-on. But to do it in the spring for them, probably saw it as a no-go. Which brings me to something. I was just thinking, as you said, you guys are doing your thing there, and you're trying to keep the populations in check, and yet you're in a bubble because all around you, these birds are running rampant. They're running wild, with no check at all. So it's a losing battle for you, right?
Well, what I'm doing right now is I'm talking with the ministry on the Canadian side, and I'm discussing things about our main area that we run is from Valleyfield to Gananoque, and there's a lot of islands by Brockville, Massena on the American side, Brockville. Right by Kingston, right by Gananoque, where there's certain islands where the birds have nested and they've taken over. You guys seen them out there. A lot of people have seen them. I think what really brought everything to head is there was a story a few years back, and I know you guys know the story because we discussed it before, where there was these islands by Toronto that were just taken over by the birds. And I think that's what really brought everything up, was that how it truly affected the tourism in that area. People were going to those islands, picnicking on those islands, vacationing on those islands, hanging out on those, and now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, no one's going to those islands.
No, Hannah Island is one of them. It used to be a great area to go and have some recreational downtime on in the Toronto area, and it's a rock, and it's an ugly rock. It's not just a rock now; it's an ugly rock.
Yeah, It's like a devastation, right? It's like an apple. It's unreal. It's gross.
And so we noticed that same thing here. These the islands where the birds have taken over, that people used to go there, families would go there, picnic, things like that. So that that right there kind of really affects your community, and it kind of, depending, especially like the area of Toronto is really big, that can really affect the economy there, the tourism economy, and things like that. And so like you guys were saying earlier, why wasn't something done? And I think it's a political reason why, politicians don't want to step up and say, okay, they know it's common sense, let's get rid of them. In this one area, it'll bring the economy back, it'll help and things like that. It can be a political disaster for them if they went ahead and they did something like that. And it's a tough call.
Do you have, Bill, go back to the hunt. Does the band have rules instated as to who can do it? How many shots? Is there any protocol as to, the culling process of it?
Well, we can, we basically can shoot what we want, shoot as many as we can, and stuff like that. And it's basically, everyone has to have their hunter safety course to make sure they're safe with their guns, to make sure everyone's, can, soundly shoot their guns, safely shoot, and things like that, and protocols. And, we usually have the conservation officers, we notify them, the police, the band council police, we notify them when we're going out to do our are culling, they know, so that they contact other police forces. Then when they hear a lot of shooting going on in the spring, people are like, people that live nearby are calling police, find out what's going on, so that the police force can tell them, well, the tribal members are out there culling these birds. They're trying to keep the population down, things like that, just so they're not scared. Because the first few times we did it, no one knew, and so we had uh, Quebec police, RCMP, OPP out there in boats, wondering what's going on, and they were contacting the band police, tribal police. What's going on? It sounds like a war zone going on out there. Is all the shooting? Is there? And then so they started calling around, and they figured out what was going on, and so that's where we really had to have the communications between all the law enforcement and all the ministry people.
Have you had one of the animal rights groups approach you? Has there been any protesting? Has there been any lobbying on their part over this?
Well, they came to us. We've spoken to in the area animal rights people that were like, their strict standard is, just leave the birds be, things like that. And we've spoken to them. We give them all the information to the reasons why we're doing it. The culling, the overpopulating, and how it can really decimate everything and things like that in the area. So it's like, you're going to have some people that do understand, and they're like, well, you guys aren't killing everything. No. We're just trying to keep their numbers down. We don't want to make them disappear completely. You can watch them, and, they're nice birds to look at, things like that. But it's just, you have to protect, your the economy, the ecosystem you have, because these birds will come in and, they can really decimate a fish population really quick.
Absolutely.
In all fairness to your comment, though, and you can read the comments that are coming up here beside us. Most people, when it comes to the cormorant cull and controlling cormorants, there's only one word they're thinking about, and that is eradicate. Right. And it's used a lot, and I think that's what's fueling the other side of this debate into saying, look what you guys are doing. You're looking to decimate an entire species. And I'm glad you said that that's not the case in certainly with your people, that you just want to have some sort of control.
Yes.
To try and keep the balance, because without it, it's out of whack.
Something else too. There was some comments over on the side about animals eating them or whatever. Let me just tell you something about these birds. They can be very toxic. These birds. It's not like just their crap is toxic. Apparently, their insides can be toxic. There's times when the guys that are culling these birds, maybe Bill does that, where the people will wear gloves to touch them so they don't get any of these parasites on them.
We do.
And they say, do not ever train your dog on cormorants, because it's great. It'd be great to train your dog for duck hunting, right? They say, do not do that, because even your dog can get parasites from cormorants.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do have parasites. We've taken a lot of the cormorants that we do in our areas, and conservation wants to take samples like they do with fish, sturgeon. They take samples, scale samples. They're doing the same thing. We turn over a certain amount of the bodies to them, and they do studies on them. They take samples out of them, check for parasites, make sure what kind of health is going on with the birds and stuff like that. And I seen there was a question on here that the gentleman was asking how we dispose. We actually dispose of them. We take plastic garbage bags, and we pick up all the bodies of the birds, everything, and we properly dispose of them in a site we've chosen, a dump site, where we bury them and stuff like that.
I had no idea they were toxic. So I guess eating them is right out of the question. Obviously, nobody's going to be eating.
Well, I mean, if anyone's ever gone and seen one of these cormorant islands, you'll see what it is. Most of the trees, if you see the trees that they nest in, most of the trees look like, the thing I tell everybody is, you ever see, like, before there's snow on the ground and people want to decorate their houses for Christmas, and they spray all that white stuff on their shrubs all the time? That's how the trees look. They're not green, and this is in May and June in the summer.
So why?
And what we find is that from their toxicity and their waste, it kills everything. It kills the leaves, kills the bark, it kills the grass, it kills the roots of the trees, the exposed roots of the trees. If you go onto one of these islands, I mean, I don't recommend it, because just the smell and everything, even the moss on the rocks on the shoreline is gone. Everything that's on that island that was, organic life, just it's dead, it's gone, and it takes years.
they're not like your dog people that go and take a poop out in the backyard. These things will shit wherever they sit. They sit in the tree. The same nest that where they're nesting in or whatever they're feeding their babies in, they're crapping at the same time. They're dropping it right there.
Yes.
And
exactly.
Of course, as Paul Buck just pointed out, wherever they go, the fish populations are either non-existent or drop off the face of the earth pretty darn quick.
Yeah.
Somebody earlier on was just mentioning that an island on Lake Couchiching is now totally decimated by the
Really?
cormorant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I mean, we've seen it, and you and I seen it on Thor Island on Simcoe. We fished it for years ago. We fished out in front of it, and we watched the progression, Bill. Every season, we could see it getting less leaves and more of that white frosting on it that you're talking about.
Right.
And all of a sudden, and it's just in sections, right? They'll annihilate the section, and then like Bill says, they got to move on because there's nothing there. They'll move on, and they'll just and then pretty soon an island like Thor Island can be decimated. It can be done, the whole thing. So
yeah, we were actually. Like, we have one of the islands, Thompson's Islands, where we have the kids camp, where they have a camp set up, and the birds have moved from the one island because it's too overpopulated. Now they're on this island, so now they're like really. The council's talking to us about it. We really have to do something because now it's moving into, the tourism island where the kids are at their camps and things like that. And the camps that are on this island where we hunt them now haven't been used in 10 years. They're all just fallen. They're just covered in cormorant poop. They're dilapidated.
oh my God.
And the owners of the island are like, we went to them to get permission, and they said just take everything. They wanted us to actually go in and cut down every tree, every shrub that's in there, so nothing can stay on the islands anymore, to try to get it to grow back. But from the studies that we did, like by Brockville, there's one island out in front where they nest on the ground because all the trees are gone. Those trees, like they chase the cormorants away, those islands, they haven't came back.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's 5 years it's sitting like that, and it still hasn't come back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeremy Foote says Hamilton Bay years ago was a perfect example of their destruction. The islands that were put in there with trees were ruined, and he believes that they're gone now because of this. And that's happening all over. By the way, I also see that people from the eastern portions of Canada are piping in saying, hey, no, it's not exclusive to you. We have problems down here too. I don't think there's a province that we have been to that is not feeling the effects of this bird. I know there was a bit of talk a few years ago from some animal rights people saying that, this is a natural cycle for these birds that are moving from Manitoba through northern Ontario and into the south, and it's cyclical, and eventually they'll move on, and that's all crap. Okay, it's crap, literally.
Well, I mean, they will move on. No, it's true, they will move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's when all the resources that feeds them is gone.
Exactly.
They will move on and find. See, because right now what we're finding, and there's like, some of my buddies in the freshwater lakes and up in the mountains have never seen cormorants there, even though they've been in the Seaway Valley and Lake Ontario and all over the place. Now they're starting to see them in the lakes way up in the mountains that are just filled with trout and small fish. And if these birds get in there, they're really going to decimate the mountains up there, the mountain lakes.
That's a good one Doug's got there, right? Read that.
One of our regulars, Doug Atkinson, says, what happens if you bury them? Does it not contaminate the soil?
That's a good one, but I don't think they're not toxic like that. I don't think. I mean, it's a parasite that I'm sure is alive when they're alive, and when you just freshly kill them, that parasite is still there. So when you're touching them, your dogs, your animals, and all that stuff, I don't think and the reason the trees are dying is because the ammonia, I think it's ammonia, if I'm not mistaken,
right.
The ammonia in their crap is killing all the trees and all that. So once they're dead, I'm sure that then all of a sudden they can just decompose. I would assume after a couple of days, but I'm just guessing at that one. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, the pit, we buried them 20 feet deep, so we don't know. We have heavy machinery, like, we dig deep holes the season, and we buried them. We put 3-4 feet of fresh dirt over them, and just keep going until the holes are filled. I mean, we're in the same hole. We bury them in the same hole we started 10 years ago. So we're
okay. Now you need to cover that hole up, Billy, and plant some tulips and see if they grow. That'll tell everybody what the hell's going on.
Yeah, maybe we should try it.
Billy, we could talk with you all night. Obviously, we haven't even touched our favorite subject when we spend time with you, and that is fishing. But I promise we'll do that next time. Tonight, we needed to get you on just to emphasize this issue with the cormorants and the cull, and we really appreciate you joining us, man.
One quick point. I talked to Bill. One quick point. They have shot a lot of birds there, and they don't even notice a difference. That's what Bill said to me.
Like I said, this season alone in our area, we've shot over 900 birds from the spring, and to be honest, the population is here. It's not doing anything. But I think anything, if they were to do a season, I know they did the fall season because the hunters are out there, but I think to really make a difference, if they were to change it, and all it would take is 1 year, because there's a lot of hunters that would do it.
Yep.
If they set it as its own season.
Yep.
Agreed. In the spring, before they nest up, early May into April, set it up when they're finding their nesting areas, their nesting islands they want to go, get in there, and even within 2 years, in any area where they're at, the populations would be brought right down under control. Because I know the ministry and also the DEC in the States were doing studies they were spraying the eggs, trying to do things like that. It just didn't do anything. And the comments I made to them is, yeah, you guys are taking out the eggs, but you're not taking out the egg layers. That's where you have to work on, is getting the egg layers.
And I also think you can't put a limit on it. You know, somebody came up with this number of 16 birds, I think,
right,
are allowed. And that's an arbitrary figure. That's not science. That's not a study of the flock and saying, well, you know, if we have 1.2 hunters going in, no, that's just a number that was pulled out of a hat. I think, much like you, I think there needs to be a dedicated season.
Yes.
There's a window, call it 30 days, whatever you want to call it, and have at it.
Yep.
Have at it, right?
It's basically the same thing. When they first started noticing, when they first protected the cormorants, there wasn't that many population. The population was really low when they became federally protected. They thought they were going extinct, like what happened with the snow geese.
Right.
A long time, 100 years ago, they thought they were almost shot into into extinction. So they stopped the season. You can't shoot. And now look at the snow geese.
Yeah.
Now they have open bag limits. You can shoot as many as you want. Yep. And they've tried for years. The hunters have tried for years to bring them under control, and there's no way to stop them.
Yep.
There's no way to stop them. And the same thing happening with them. They go up north into the tundras to nest. There's no food because they come in, they eat everything out. They're done. And the same things happen with the cormorants.
Yeah. And as I've said a million times, we are the apex predator on this planet. As long as we keep that under control and use it as sound management tools, that's what we're going to do, right? And we need to manage this particular situation.
I mean, if they had a spring hunt, if they do a spring hunt, it's actually a benefit for everybody. Excuse me. It'll take down the populations, but it'll actually increase because they can sell licenses, special hunting licenses and things like that. Sporting goods stores will increase because of the shells that'll be bought for during the hunt and stuff like that. It's a win-win all the way around.
Yep.
Perfect. My friend, I've got to cut you loose, but thank you ever so much, and we will stay in touch. Next time we'll talk about fishing, especially bass.
Yeah, we have to do that. I keep telling you guys, you got to get up here. You got to get up here.
I know.
Talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, you guys take care. Take care, everyone.
William Clute from the St. Regis Mohawk tribe in the Cornwall area. I want to thank him he's actually in New York, but they're in that whole area, and wonderful man. Absolutely prince of the earth. He knows his stuff.
Oh, does he ever?
Oh,
we'll sit there just to give you an example. When we first met Bill, we were fishing the tournament on the St. Lawrence River, that B1. And Bill came over and he recognized us, and we just started talking, kind of built a relationship. So every year that we practice, Bill will find us. He'll come over and we'll tie up our boats together. We'll start shooting the shit, and then all of a sudden we'll find ourselves about 5 miles downriver. The current has taken us that far because we're talking so long and so much, talking about fishing and all that stuff. It's got a good relationship with him. He's a funny guy.
Another great guy has been waiting patiently.
Uh-oh.
Hiya folks, Gord Pizer here for Outdoor Canada magazine, and I want to talk about falling for fish. What I really want to talk about is fishing in the fall period. I love the fall, probably my favorite time of the year for a whole bunch of good reasons. If you look over my shoulder right now, I have the whole lake to myself. all the prime spots on this water body, there's not another boat on them. Even better still, in the fall, fish behave exactly like black bears. You know, believe it or not, a black bear will feed for over 20 hours a day in the fall, trying to gain as much nourishment as possible to get it through that cold winter period. Well, walleye, smallmouth, largemouth, muskies, northern pike, black crappies, all do the very, very same thing. They're feeding intensively to get them through the upcoming cold winter period. So what's the message? Don't put the boat to bed too early this fall.
Don't we know that?
Hey, morning.
Hey, boys.
How are you, bud?
Doing well.
Good. Sorry, we're a little late there. We got all caught up in this cormorant issue.
I was listening and I thought, you know what? I think I'll talk crappies instead of crap.
Good one. Good transition, Gordy. That's why you are the man right there, brother.
First of all, how is the transition period coming along up north? How's the fall coming?
Spectacular, Ange. We had 19 degrees today. And had I not been doing, but I was out 2 days ago for smallmouth, and probably the best bite this year.
What?
Nice.
You kill me. Every time you're on, you're telling me you have the best bite. Like, do you ever have a bad day?
He's getting that much better every day.
But you know what? You guys saw the muskie, eh?
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
Tell us a story about that.
My buddy John, and he's not in the greatest of health right there. There's the fish, 6-pound test line, a 1/4 ounce jig, and a crappie minnow. Can you believe it? We go out with $1 million of tackle in our boat. We've got 18 musky rods. We're happy if we see a follow.
Yeah.
We go out with jig and a minnow fishing for crappies, and he hooked on. And then what we did, we spot locked. He started yelling. His knees were knocking. I was right beside him. And so I pulled my boat up and we paralleled each other, spot locked, and he brought it right in between the boat. And all I had was a walleye net. And I got it head first in the walleye net. 3/4 of the fish was dangling outside of the net. And I brought him in the boat. Was 48 inches and change. But it was one of the fattest fish I've ever landed. I guarantee 34, 35 pounds.
Gordy, how does that happen? How do you land a fish that size on 6-pound test line? Like, how?
With teeth like a shark, by the way, on 6-pound test line, right?
We were so lucky because John hooked it right on. I could see the jig outside, and this is gonna blow your mind. He lost a minnow about 30 seconds beforehand, little tiny minnow. He baits up another minnow drop, so that I'm positive that muskie was eating 2-inch crappie minnows. But here's the funny thing, guys. Liam, 2 years ago, we landed the biggest lake trout we've ever pulled through a hole in the ice, and we were fishing for yellow perch, and he landed that one on 4-pound test line. And so many people said, how do you land them? And you know what the secret is? Never putting pressure on the fish. Yep. I honestly believe that muskie and the lake trout that Liam caught, I honestly believe neither of those fish knew they were hooked.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, Ange, you and I have done that up north on fishing for walleye, jigging minnow up in northern Ontario. You're looking for your shore lunch, and all of a sudden this 18, 20-pound northern comes in and just gives you that hit, and you're thinking there's a walleye, and all of a sudden, what the hell is that?
Again, this is the honest truth, and I did not put this in my blog. We left that spot. We went to the next area. About 20 minutes later, Pete, I was doing exactly what you said. I sat on a walleye, about a 16-inch fish. All of a sudden, down to the bottom, and I had another muskie on. And it hit the walleye. It could have been a 2-trophy day, and we weren't even fishing for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Think about that. Wow.
here's what I'm thinking here. I'm trying to draw this picture up, and it makes so much sense. So the muskie are there feeding on. No, think about it.
I
The
love,
muskie,
oh, I love your wheels turning like this. Gordy Kaiser's the only man on earth that can get your wheels turning like that, by the way. Okay, just so you know.
muskie are there feeding obviously on walleye or crappie, whatever it is that you're after that day. They're on the outside, the perimeter, right? Just waiting for the opportunity to chow down on one of these other smaller predator fish, if you will. Why wouldn't they take the odd little minnow that comes swimming out of that school? You know what I mean?
Opportunistic, and if
Exactly.
it's there, and all I got to do is open my mouth and eat it, and
Why not?
and it's got a 1/4 ounce jig. We were fishing black and yellow jig, and there's a minnow on the end. If there's no effort,
Why
eat it.
not? So then that leads me to ask this question, Gord. Why wouldn't you kind of change your game plan at that point and say, hey, there's muskie in the area. They're obviously on the bite. I'm going to switch my tactics up and go after these giant muskie.
If I had musky baits and musky rods on the boat, I would have. We were walleye, bass, and crappie fishing. I had unloaded everything out of the boat, restocked it with the. But Ange, your point is really well taken. I had so many folks afterwards, and guys have been. We've had a really good. This has been a premier musky year, and so I've had a lot of folks lately saying, "What should I target?" And I have two answers. Number one is muskies always are where you find them. I mean, we love to be science about it, eh? You know, rocky points, bars, show. Those damn things are wherever you find them. And
Yeah.
your point earlier was if you're walleye fishing, catching walleyes, if you're smallmouth and crappie fishing, you can almost bet there's another bigger predator close by, whether it's a lake trout, a big northern pike, or a muskie. I mean, that's what they're feeding on.
Sure.
One other thing I've said to a lot of folks recently, when the guys were doing Project Noble Beast on the Ottawa River, and that's where Muskies Inc. and the boys were actually tracking big muskies. And I spoke to the folks that were doing the tracking studies, and they said every third or fourth cast, you should make out to no man's land. And if more often we would fish out in no man's land, we would catch, because they're tracking these things and they just show up where they shouldn't be. They're not on points, they're not on bars, they're not on weed edges. You know, it's like that 1,000-pound gorilla where it can sleep wherever it
Whatever it
wants.
wants. How true is that?
You know what, boys? I'd have to say I think that goes for all species and not just muskie. I do believe that goes for all fish species. I've seen so many times where I'll just fire a cast with a Senko out the opposite way of the shoreline that somebody fishing, just a stupid cast, and it's not going to catch, and boom, a 3.5-pound largemouth out in the middle of nowhere, no weeds, no nothing. I think it happens a lot more than people would, expect on all species.
You know, or Pete, you know what I think it is we, on those other species, we do find the really good structure and cover. So we'll find a weed edge. The other day, you and I, we were talking last time about those deep weed lines and how they move out to secondary, tertiary points.
Yep.
But they're not just on that structure.
Exactly.
They cruise the outside.
Right.
You know, those bigger
Exactly.
fish, they're patrolling around. And
Exactly.
we get too finite. We get a little bit too specific. I got to have this bait. I got to be on this structure. No, you don't.
No, you know what? Bass are a great species. We'll move a little bit to that, especially in the fall. And Ant and I have been noticing this a lot with Garmin's Live Scope, is that they rarely sit still. They're not like those ones that are out, maybe one under a log. Yeah, he lives under that log. He stays in that cover. There's one on a rock or something like that. Individual fish here and there. The majority of those fish are moving all the time, always moving and hunting and swimming, whatever they're doing. I don't know, but they're moving a lot.
I have a friend, Mark Alford, down in the Ottawa area. Actually lives in a little town called Griffith. And I'll tell you right now, Mark is probably the best open water whitefish angler in North America. No, he probably fishes whitefish in open water 120 days a year in open water. So nobody does that.
Yeah.
He was fishing the other day, and I think they got like 40, 50, 60 whitefish, and like almost Simcoe size.
Oh,
Pete, he said the fish were moving so quickly, he watched them just swim right through the sonar. And your point is so well taken. And especially in the fall right now,
yeah.
they are on the move. They're moving from summer location to winter. And for all the guys that fish for muskies, muskie anglers, there's a critical temperature I always look for. And John Castleman, Dr. Castleman, really was the one that got me on this. And John did so much great muskie tracking work. When the water temperature hits 59, 60 degrees, 15 Celsius, muskie's home range breaks down. And until it drops to 5-degree water temperature, they are roamers. They roam from 15 to 5, or from 60 to about 40. So 59 to about 40, they can be any, and this is the time of the year. So what do we always say? We always say in the fall, trolling is the best option. And you know what? I hate trolling. I hate trolling for much. I know it is the best fish I've ever caught have been trolling, but I hate doing it. I'd much rather cast. But the reason is those two moving targets. Muskies are moving, you're moving. You can't predict really often where they're going to be. Two moving targets have a much better chance of meeting up and hitting each other.
And I think that can be said for all species, though. This time of year, it's just a different mentality that you have to be in. And you have to be on the move. These fish, and you just said, to your point, they're moving. And the only way to have a really successful day is you got to move too. More so now than during the summer period, and even to some extent the spring period. You've got to be, and trolling, as much as a lot of us don't like doing it, it is an effective way, right?
Absolutely.
You look at those Bay of Quinte walleye right now. They're starting to make a major move right now. That's not for feeding; it's for spawning. But they're going to eat that whole entire trip until they get in there. You know what I mean? So it's all about movement right now.
Yeah,
really great point, Pete. I've got a piece coming out in Outdoor Canada tomorrow. I've had so many writers, and actually I answered a really good question I received from a writer, and he echoed what 5 or 6 other people have written in or emailed into the magazine, and they're saying we can't find walleye anymore, and places like the Bay of Quinte, Lake Winnipeg, with the Red River, Lake of the Woods with the Rainy River, and what walleye will do on those giant Lake Erie as well with the Thames River. What they do is they move in the fall. It's actually a spawning move. They move in the fall to winter out in front of where they will spawn next spring. It doesn't make any sense to a fish to go through the winter and then all of a sudden swim 40, 50, 60 miles if it's full of eggs to get to a river. They stage out in front. So right now, those fish are moving into the Bay of Quinte. They'll spend the winter in there, and trolling is a great option. But as you know, throwing swim baits is probably the most overlooked trick for those Bay of Quinte walleyes.
And more fun too, eh? And more fun.
By the way,
more fun.
We have a lot more people that love trolling than we think. A lot of people are saying, "What do you mean you don't like trolling? I love trolling."
It's a very popular way of fishing, for sure.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. You know, when we go lake trout, even right now, there's only a couple more days left in the lake trout series. As much, I mean, I got downriggers on the boat. We got dip sea divers and lead core outfits. I still would much rather cast and jig for them.
And by the way, I was telling Pete this story last week. Can't remember what brought it on, but about, I don't know, I'm going to say 25, 30 years ago, I was fishing, Reno and I were fishing the big Kingston tournament for smallmouth bass. And at that time, the perennial winner, like I'm talking every year for 5 years in a row, was this charter boat, and a big, like, I'm going to say probably a 30-foot charter boat. And he would go out in the morning. He wouldn't even blast off. Like we're in there with our little 17 foots with a $150 on the back, causing all kinds of havoc. He'd wait till all the dust cleared and then just putter out. He'd be back by 9:30 weighing in every day. Every day. And he'd wipe us all out. And we figured out what he was doing. We finally saw him after a few years. The guy was trolling for smallmouth bass out in front of these big, long points that lead into those shallow back bays. While we're in the back there vertically trying to, do our thing, he'd just troll up and down, in 12 to 18 feet of water and smacking them like crazy.
Yeah.
Even in the spring, trolling works, and even for bass, right?
And I have talked to two, and now I've never fished the tournaments you guys fish down there, but I've talked to a couple guys that fish the tournaments on Rideau. Yeah. And they have talked to one guy, told me he went in, this guy came over and he was lake trout trolling with downriggers. And the guy said, if you want to catch them, and he said, this is what you got to do. But he said, no way. And he said, come to take a look at it. And the guy had 7-pound smallmouth in the freezer that he caught on downriggers.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
But absolutely, they eat what the trout eat. If that's where the cyst goes and the smell and all that high quality, high protein forages, they behave like lake trout.
Yeah. Hey,
now,
Gord,
I want to say one quick thing for all the bass guys out there. The other day when I said how good the bass were, they are tight. So yes, we move, and we'll go spot after spot after spot. But trust me, right now, if you catch one, there's 100 there with it.
Oh, I like that.
Crazy.
I hate when you say that kind of stuff. Hey, Gord, can I throw one quick question at you, or a quick observation? I caught a walleye. I got 2 walleye this weekend. Cleaned them both. One had eggs in her already.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They will have eggs starting in July, Pete.
Okay.
So, in fact, walleye are maintenance feeders in the winter. So, yes, they eat, and yes, they will hit our baits. Smallmouth are even worse. Smallmouth are just like the black bear we were talking about in the video. But walleye and smallmouth, they need as much nourishment as possible right now to get them through the winter starvation period. So probably 75–80% of the egg development, it has occurred right now. And after ice out, it's so quick to spawning period. All they do is it's a very quick maturation process. So they'll feed a little bit and then they'll spawn, but 90% of that happens before ice up.
So what would be a late initial development of the eggs? And this fish has had a good amount of eggs. It wasn't a big fish. It was a small, it was 18-inch walleye or something like that. Perfect eater. And it had, a decent amount of eggs throughout its stomach. It wasn't bulbous or anything like that. Are there female fish right now, walleye, in, let's just say, this part of Southern Ontario that don't have eggs yet, but are going to develop eggs? Or is it kind of it should be already there by now?
No, they should all be there by now. They're running out of time. And this is the other interesting thing, Pete, to your point. It's called sonomic growth. The growth that they actually devote to themselves, a female, it's only a matter of a few weeks. It's only like 14, 21 days of the year. They're really growing for themselves. And virtually all the rest of the energy they're accumulating is toward egg maturation and egg development. And of course, that's the reason the biggest fish, other than smallmouth, believe it or not, male smallmouth are as big as female, but muskies, rare to catch a male over 40 inches. Walleye, always females. Northern pike, very same. So they're feeding right now for egg development, and they have all the eggs in them right now. They may not be full size, but they will have all the eggs inside them right now developing that they're going to lay next spring. And the interesting thing is ice fishermen will catch a fish and they'll keep it, and it might be a 16-inch, 17-inch walleye. And, some folks will say, geez, you're killing a female with all the eggs in it. Well, you're doing the same thing right now.
Yeah. People wouldn't realize it for sure. Now, I'll change this up. You're staying on fall. I always like to know this. What is Lake in the Woods or wherever you've been fishing lately water temperature? Right? Because I've got a feeling it's very close to what our water temperatures are right now. What are you running for the most part?
Yeah, today, as I say, today was 19, 20 degrees. So on the surface, I'll bet today on the surface was 59. It might have even touched 60, 61, but that's only an inch or two. And folks should never get fooled by the surface temperature. Oh, it went up 10 degrees today. Well, that's the top inch or two. And circulation circulates it. But underneath where the fish are right now, it's 56, 57, 59 degrees. Yeah. And that's perfect migration, moving around. They're feeding up their bears. They gotta eat as much energy right now to get through that fall, winter starvation period.
Do you follow thermoclines at all, Gord?
Thermocline's breaking down right now. So right now the lake is in turnover. And that's the other really cool thing. And we should talk about that for the walleye folks, because once you get turnover and the thermocline breaks down, the whole lake's exposed to the fish. It's almost optimal temperature, or the same temperature from top to bottom. So walleye that were excluded from deep structures all through the summer, now they're available. And so there's no concrete brick wall, if you like, the thermocline that prohibited them from going deeper. And now the whole lake's open. And the other cool thing is ciscos and whitefish, they spawn in the fall. So they're coming shallower and shallower and shallower as the walleye and bass are going deeper and deeper and deeper. Ooh, and pike and muskies, and they all interact and meet, and it's game on, boys.
Look at Ange, watch this. Where's my finger? I got to see if I can see it. How can I tell? This is to Gord. How can I tell when my lake is turning over? That was a question I had tonight, Gordo. So that's what we're talking about this. How the hell can we tell? Because we're in southern Ontario. You're way up in northern Ontario. Is there an indication that we can tell when our lake is turning over?
There are a couple of ways, Pete, but water temperature is the critical one. If your surface temperatures are in the high 50s, the lake is turning over. It's starting to turn over, and full turnover happens when it gets down a little bit cooler than this. Certainly, water's densest, heaviest when it's 40 degrees. So overnight, we've had a couple nights of frost, and on the surface, that means the surface cooled probably to 40 degrees, or a millimeter or two, and that's dense. It starts to fall, and then the wind will turn it over, and it starts to mix, and that's how it cools down. But once your lake gets into the mid 50s, it's starting to, the thermocline is fully eroding, it's turning over, and it's opening up the lake, and the walleye, bass and northern pike and muskies can start going deeper, and the ciscos and lake trout and whitefish are coming up, and everything's interacting and meeting with each other.
So once your surface temp hits 55, is that what you're saying?
I mean, full turnover is when it's 40. And when it's 40, the whole lake will be 40 degrees. It'll be 40 on the surface and 40 down below. And there's no thermal conflict, if you will, to mixing. So if you get wind when water's 40 degrees, it starts turning the lake over. And that's how nature restores oxygen to the bottom. It takes surface oxygenated water, and wind causes that to go down to the bottom. Plus at night, once we get close to that 40 degrees, 42, 44, it's sinking, because the surface overnight is starting to chill. So that water's sinking down, it's heavier, and the wind's churning it over, and it's bringing oxygen down to the bottom.
So
that's a lot for a person to chew, by the way. Just for those of you out there who are sitting there saying, huh? What did he say? Don't feel embarrassed. Okay, that was a lot of information there, and the best thing to do is to search it out, find a good. Well, I'm sure Gord's got a gazillion blogs out there with that.
I do,
and study it. Where can you send them for that, Gord? Is there a place
where Canada? I did a specific piece on fall turnover I believe it was last year. It might have been the year before, and it's definitely on outdoorcanada.ca. Type in Pizer thermocline, and you'll read about it. But the really cool, I mean, this is Mother Nature at her most brilliant. Water is densest at 40 degrees. That means at 39, it floats. And at 42, it floats. And water at 40, that means just there's a point in the spring and a point in the fall always when your lake will be 40 degrees top to bottom. And that's how oxygen gets replenished to the bottom. In the fall, it'll keep getting colder at the surface. It'll go from 40 to 39. I'm still old school in Fahrenheit. So it goes from 40 to 39, and 39, it's floats. It's less dense than 40. And that's why when you drill a hole in the wintertime, it's 32 on the surface and 40 down below. And in the summertime, it'll be 80 on the surface and 40 down below.
We have a great question. We have to answer it from our good friend, Uncle Jack Summers from Radio World. He wants to know, does water temperature affect the density of the water? And to that question, he believes that his boat has a higher top end in the spring and fall.
I do too, Jack. 100%. I believe it cruises better. I believe we feel it. And I do believe it's that as it gets down closer to the magic 40 degrees, as it's cooling and the surface is dropping, I do believe the water being heavier, being more dense, it definitely is at 40. And I definitely do believe. The other thing, guys, I have no reason to, I have no science, but I do believe this is the case. We see less really significant, I mean, it gets wavy in the fall, but I do think it is, maybe it's just me sensing it, but I think as we get into later October and November, it takes more wind to create the same waves.
Wow.
I got a question.
So?
I got a question for Jack Summers. What the hell has your boat speed at top end got to do with catching fish? Like, who cares, Jack?
He wants to get to them ahead of you guys.
Yeah, okay. That's about the only chance he's got. How's that sound?
Gord, last time, Paul says, Gord, last time that you mentioned about bass will not feed until they find their home if taken away from that spot and released in the fall. Is this also true of summer season when during our tournaments, for example, they're caught and released away from their home area?
You know, we when I was with M&R for 31 years, and when I was up here, district manager in Kenora, we replicated Mark Ridgway's work in Opeongo, and Mark did some of the most brilliant tracking work. But here on Lake of the Woods, we tracked. We put radio tags in a pretty good number of smallmouth bass and largemouth, but in the smallmouth, and then we moved them. We intentionally moved them from their home ranges, and the further we moved them, the more difficulty they had getting home. But they are so faithful to spring, summer, fall home ranges, they will spend all of their time looking for home. Now, in smaller systems, so if you're in the Kawarthas or the Muskokas, or in a small lake, a 600, 700, 800 acre lake. In fact, when Mark did his work on Opeongo, and Opeongo's a decent sized water, he took them across 120, 150 feet in the spring. They were back on their nest before he boated back. That's how fast. So they knew how to get back to their spring. That's how faithful they are. So we wanted to find out on Lake of the Woods, that's 1 million acres of water, 14,000 islands, 65,000 miles of shoreline here. And the unfortunate part was the further we moved them, the more difficulty they had finding their way back home. In the fall, when we did some work in the fall, and what happened in the fall, if they hadn't made their way home, up to 50% of the fish were dead over winter. They starved because they weren't in the fall, as we've been talking about. This is when you better bulk up. This is when you better do what the bears are doing and add nourishment. And they weren't doing that. They were going, my God, I got to get home. I got to get to my fall spot. And so they weren't feeding. And just again, another good caution, because I know most of the guys listening are good conservationists, and most of the bass anglers catch and release, but catch and release in the fall on the spots where you're catching them. The further you take them away for that hero shot at the end of the day, you might have killed every one of the fish in the live well. Now, you'll say, oh, they swam away, they were in great shape, but they're not going to feed now. They're looking for home. And if you move them 25 miles with a bunch of islands in between, our work showed they died.
How did you track them, Gord? How did you track those fish to find out the 50% died?
They had individual sonar returns. So there's sonar tags. And
Okay.
so we snorkeled and scuba dived down when they were on the nest, brought them up in, and we actually surgically opened them up, and
Yep.
we put radio transmitters inside, and then we sewed them back up, and everyone had an individual frequency. So when we were listening to them on the, we knew, you know, there's Betty, there's George, there's Pete, there's Ange, and they some of them were named.
Wow.
And the further we moved them away, the greater they had difficulty finding home, and the greater the chance they were going to die over the winter.
And to your point,
Sorry, Anson, so I'm going to just carry on this kind of a two-part question. So those ones that didn't make it back, were they at least on the track to get back, or were they way off and they just got lost out in the middle of the abyss of Lake of the Woods?
It's the further we move them, Pete, that's what happened. One of Mark's fish, believe it or not, he dropped them, he moved them, and then dropped it a fair distance away. It swam around like it could have been an island like Georgina. It swam around the island the entire summer, never stopped.
Wow.
And it didn't know, you know, I better move, but it kept, I don't know where I am. And he kept spinning balls.
Wow.
Now here, this is interesting because folks will also say, you know, bass also migrate new areas, and they'll move to an area and they survive. And yet, you know, 50% did, although 50% died. But we also had a couple fish, believe it or not, they were close enough. Now, this is the difference. We moved them not so far that they couldn't find their way home. They actually swam about 11 miles, and they were coming back, and they were very, very close to where we moved them from, and they turned around and went back, and it was almost as though they said, you know what, where you dropped me off, it was a hell of a lot better than where I came from. And they went back.
That's awesome.
But here's the real takeaway. We say to ourselves, these are dumb fish with brains that are the size of our small fingernail. These are amazingly adapted creatures, and that know their water so well. And it's what I've always said, and muskies are the same. We start sticking rattles inside of baits, and we throw topwaters that make a lot of noise. And let me tell you, if you're throwing for largemouth and you're throwing for smallmouth, or I'm casting for muskies, it knew the minute your bait hit the water. You didn't need to add a rattle to tell it I'm up here.
No kidding. No kidding. Absolutely.
And it's why finesse has really taken off. I was down on Lake Mead several years ago, and I fishing with Roy Hawk, one of the best anglers down in the U.S. And believe it or not, Lake Mead is, and you guys, I think, have fished down there, and you've seen Mead just outside of Vegas. I mean, we don't know what fishing pressure is like
until you go there.
So yeah, you go there. I mean, on a spinnerbait, if you don't hit it immediately you're not getting that fish. You better know how to set a hook now. But anyway, we were on a pretty good topwater bite, and Roy was fighting, and it was the first time I'd ever seen this. And it's something folks can stick up their bass quivers. So Roy threw out on a point, and he's pulling it across, and he's pulling a big bass comes out and explodes on his bait. Boy, he missed it. So what do we do? What do most anglers do when that happens? We fire right back in and hope the fish is going to hit it again. Roy threw as far away from where that fish hit. And he said, I'm always looking for the maximum distance. I don't want to be so far that they won't come out and chase it, but I want to find that maximum threshold. So he was firing out like maybe 40 yards, 20 yards away, and he was catching those fish. And that's when I discovered, forget the rattles for muskies, forget, these fish know when we're throwing baits up on the surface. And he blew my mind that day. He never, ever threw back into the same fish.
We find that hard to believe, and yet we just talked about a fish that can travel 40, 50 miles back to its home range. Like, how does it know? We just moved it to the other side of the lake. How does it know? Pete and I experienced that just the other day. We put some new electronics on FNC1 and took it out just to test it. We went to a local harbor here, and it was just full of salmon. Big 30+ pound salmon in a harbor, no incoming water, no nothing. And then we find out that they had been planted there 4 years earlier, and obviously these fish are returning. But my question is the old question: how do they know? How does that smallmouth on Opeongo know that 42 miles to the southeast is where it lives?
And the more interesting thing, it had never been there, obviously, in its life. And yet it still found its way. And Mark believes that they have some kind of a magnetic response. It's kind of like salmon. That is the kind of accepted theory with salmon, that they will travel 800 miles in the ocean and then go 1,000 miles up the Yukon River and spawn in the same gravel shoal it was born. Like, how do they do it? And we think these things are dumb.
So those fish that Ange were talking about too, let everybody listening here. So they're stocked in the harbor. Okay. Now, if the people stocking these fish were to just dump them in the harbor and let them go, okay, hey, perfect. They're going to come back in 5 years. They won't come back in 5 years. What they do is they have to put these fish, this is how fish's systems work. They put these fish into a cage, and they put them in a cage for 6 weeks. And then it's called imprinting. It imprints into these fish. This is their home. And if they don't do that for 6 weeks, they won't know where. After that 6 weeks, they let them go, and guaranteed they're going to come back to that same spot. How freaky is that?
Now, I maybe shouldn't share this, but I know the guys that are listening, the smallmouth, the bass guys are good guys here. The downside of how faithful these fish are, if you caught a trophy last year or 4 years ago at this time of the year or in another couple of weeks, trust me, you go back to that spot today, it will be there. It will be there. Its relatives will be there. Now, here's the downside, and we found it on Lake of the Woods when we did our tracking, and Mark found the very same thing. And I used to co-chair the Ontario, Minnesota Fisheries Technical Committee. So all the fish managers in Northwest Ontario and Minnesota, I chaired that with Jack Skrypek. And Minnesota did some phenomenal work on this as well. No matter how much pressure on that shoal you exert on those fish, they will not leave. They will not leave. So you can put 50 boats on it, and those fish will stay right there. So if the guys here, the folks here, you have a favorite spot in the fall where you've caught really nice fish, go there, and they will be there. They will.
Is that smallmouth, Gord? Is that what you're talking about, smallmouth?
That is smallmouth. Smallmouth are so, it's frightening. Nothing more than frightening how faithful they are to their spring spawning spot. We had them coming, we numbered house bricks, number 5, number 12, number whatever. And we had the bass tagged. They were carrying Floyd tags, and we had sonic tags. And no matter where they wintered, 8 miles away, they would come back and spawn the exact same fish on the exact same rock until they died.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So awesome.
So what we never did do it, but what we wanted to do was cover them up, and so that they couldn't spawn. And then the question is, what would they have done then if they came back and we had tarpaulin would make for a really good science experiment. Would they move and spawn somewhere else, or would they just absorb the eggs?
Huh?
Calvin wants to say that he thinks it may be something related to scent. Is it possible?
Absolutely. They every river smells different. So on those salmon, you know.
But hang on, that's rivers and that's salmon, but you're talking smallmouth bass on a rock, Gord. On a rock. How can that be?
That's the same fish that beat Mark back in the boat and was nesting, and it traveled across. And
It's a built-in GPS, boys, just like that Garmin right there. It's built-in GPS. That's why I wear this stuff, Angelo. Right there, buddy, because we know the fish use it, so we got to catch up to the fish, so we have to use it too. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
All that to go a long roundabout way to tell you these new Garmin units that we played with, Gord, a couple days ago. Okay, I always defend us being the fishing fraternity, because people are always saying, yeah, well, you know what, you guys, it's unfair. You guys have got unfair advantages. You got all that equipment and technology. Well, of course you're going to catch fish. And I always say, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't call it unfair. I call it using all the tools that are available to you, but we still have to get them in the boat. However, I have to maybe change that comment moving forward, because the technology that Pete and I played with a couple of days ago, what did I tell you, Pete? I said, first thing I said, well, this isn't fair. This is not fair. This is unfair, because it is. It's that good.
But Ange, I have said this many, many years as well. I do honestly believe M&R and the agencies do need to take hard looks. When I first came to Kenora, when we did our creel work, the reality is most anglers used to spend 80-90% of their day looking for fish and 10% catching. The reality today, we have gotten so good. We can now spend 80-90%. But the other reality is we don't have to kill them. We enjoy doing what we enjoy. We are better handlers of fish. Muskie survival rates are the best they've ever been. Bass survival rates are the best they've ever been. So we can have our cake and eat it too. But M&R needs to catch up with us.
Interesting point. Marco wants to know, how territorial are big pike?
And what's the best lures and I honestly, I don't know. I speculate. I do believe that the larger pike are territorial. I know that muskies are, and they're the same family. A large muskie, a large female is so territorial. She will protect a spawning area. And I mean, the ultimate is if she is the only one spawning there, she will protect it to be the only one if possible. Now, most times that's not possible. But if you then caught and killed her, no other muskies come in there to spawn. She protected it often so well. And you should have John Castleman on and talk to John about this. Muskie territoriality is absolutely brilliant. Best lures right now, this is the time of year for me. This is the time of year, truly. And I know we caught that muskie the other day on a minnow, but you can't get me away in the fall from big baits rule. This is when I throw the biggest baits possible. And by all means, absolutely, the muskie will hit a minnow, but you show it a T-bone steak, you show it that beef Wellington, it's expenditure of energy. It can eat a really, and that's why honestly, I shouldn't even share this, but I will. I love throwing whitefish Cisco colored baits. There's a bait I love, a rover. It's a rover swim bait made by a guy named Smith, Landry Smith. Go online, you can see it. But Landry makes a rover swim bait that looks identical to a Cisco, and he makes one that's about 12 inches long. I almost dislocate my elbow and my arm casting the damn thing. But it catches pike And now the downside again, you weed out the smaller fish by and large. But I'll go all day for that one bite.
Yeah, another thing, just to add to that, Gord, we've talked about it on the radio show numerous times, usually in the fall when we're talking about big baits for fall. The opposite is usually true in the spring. And one of the reasons for that is because the prey that these fish are accustomed to eating in the fall, they're at the largest size, just like the predator is at its largest through the season. And so they can get conditioned to eating these big chunks of food. If you're throwing a little wee bait to it, it's not going to cut it because that doesn't belong there. It's out of place. Conversely speaking, in the spring, in the fall, when things are just blooming and blossoming and giving birth, everything is tiny, everything is small, and you see in the spring some of these anglers in shallow water throwing these great big gaudy baits, and you wonder, wow, somebody needs to talk to this person about that. That's when you want to go small, ultra small, micro small. But in the fall, the bigger, I don't think you can get big enough.
I honestly don't either, Ange. In fact, I will be honest, when we troll, we honestly troll baits because we can't throw them. They're that big.
Yeah. That big.
Now, I will also say this, so you're right about the spring, but Ange, I always push the envelope. So yes, in the spring, we throw small baits, but this will sound strange. We throw the biggest small bait we can.
Of course.
But a big bait in the spring might be 7-8 inches. A big bait right now will be 14, 15, and you need to put it in a rod holder. It's bucking so bad.
Oh God, that's so true, right?
Can we take a couple of questions and then we could be here all night with Gordy. That's the unfortunate part. Gord, got a school of walleye related to each other?
Yeah, absolutely they are. This is brilliant. They are related often. You will not believe this, but a muskie or a walleye rather, by and large, doesn't know where to spawn for the very first time. When a walleye on Lake of the Woods, for example, and Val Masons are the late Val Masons here on Lake of the Woods, used to be the Lake of the Woods biologist. And Val did some work again with Minnesota. 1/3 of Lake of the Woods is in Minnesota. And we do a lot of cooperative work together. So we tagged walleyes and we did, Val did some brilliant work. And essentially, the reality is walleyes on Lake of the Woods, a male at 15 inches and female 16. That's the first time they spawn. Generally, they spawn for the first time 15, 16 inches. And they don't know where to go. They do not know where to spawn. So how do they spawn? They hook up with a school of larger fish and they follow them. And we talked about imprinting on salmon, Pete did. They get smarter and they remember, oh yeah. And it builds and builds and builds. But as a general principle, walleye follow older walleye to the spawning areas. And that's how they get imprinted on where to spawn.
Wow.
I can't make this stuff up. It's so
You
great.
got that right, Gord. You can't make this stuff up. That is good.
Gordy, have you ever fished Lake Tomiko?
That's the one around North Bay. My second job with M&R was in North Bay, and there is a Tomiko lake there. And I'll be honest, no, I did not. I fished Trout Lake outside of North Bay. Used to go up to Temagami and all the lakes there. Used to fish Nipissing, but I haven't fished Tomiko. I think it's a trout lake. I'm pretty sure it's a trout lake, but unfortunately, no. That's the problem with Ontario. 400,000 lakes.
God.
We haven't fished 1%, eh?
Yep, you're right. All of us together have not fished 1%, for sure. Guaranteed.
How attuned to structure walleye and bass in the fall during the transition?
It's a really good point. What I always say is we know where they're coming from. We know where they're going to. Now they will travel right now. What I always do is I know we talked about those smallmouth being on those home areas, and we know where they summered. What I always look for are the structures in between. I know where they're coming from. I know where they're going to. But I have a blog coming out. I actually have one out right now on Northern Ontario tourism. So go to the tourism blog, and I'm actually throwing lipless crankbaits and blade baits. And we've been doing pretty well on those flat bottomed areas that really aren't structure-y. And I think those fish are on the move. But I will say this, Pete was talking about sonar. You put her on side imaging or down imaging, and you find 15, 20 stones, boulders, gravel, whatever, on an otherwise flat bottom of muck. And the difference in the depth is zero. And those fish are sitting right on that slightly harder structure. And the other thing I'm finding right now, so if this is the bottom, and then you come to a structure, and let me see, and it starts going up, right at that V, I guarantee you right now, on every V where the bottom meets a piece of structure, there's walleye on Lake of the Woods. It is uncanny how they are on the bottom, but right on the edge of that structure.
Huh, that's interesting. That's a good one.
Use this analogy, and this is probably a good time to use it. If somebody airlifted you in the middle of the Sahara Desert and gave you a GPS, and you knew where the end point was, you knew where you had to go, and you had two routes to take it: the open desert or an area that takes you through some little oases all along to the destination, 99.99%, if not 100% of us are going to take the longer route, maybe, but we've got some places to rest. You find sustenance, hide, get away from the sun's heat, whatever the case may be, as opposed to going straight across the desert. So, is simple analogy that may sound, think of it next time you're chasing down fish. They are no different than we are. Chances are they are not going to be in that totally flat void of any kind of character bottom. They're just not going to be there.
No,
unless, let me interject, unless, and I'm proving this daily when I'm out fishing now, unless there's bait there.
Food.
That flat, with all this broad masses of perch are out there, you're going to find some big fish.
Except
dotted around.
Pete, what I view those, and you're 100% right. Cisco's, whitefish, emerald shiners, yellow. But what I look at that as is moving structure.
Sure.
And so when we find the Cisco's and we find the smelts, and you see 2 or 3 big arcs underneath, that's just lake trout waiting to come up.
Hang on.
And they're following the moving structure.
We
awesome.
run at Hawk Lake, not far from you, where you'll see a cluster of bait, and all of a sudden this great big, and in that lake, that big hook means one thing and one thing only, a big eye.
Nice.
Yeah. So did you come there this year at all, Gord? Were you able to make it out to Hawk Lake at all?
I haven't yet. With the little bit of resurgence, Manitoba's had some issues. We'll see. My wife has chronic lung and autoimmune disease, so I'm really
Careful.
Playing it safe right now.
Yeah, good for you. I understand.
She's yelling at me now that I'm giving away her health. She got me in trouble. Now she's swearing.
We're running out of time, so unfortunately we're gonna have to cut you short. But wow, what a great this was a great evening. We've had a lot of great evenings with you. We had a lot of great Saturdays with you. We've had a lot of great times with you. This was a pretty special one. So
for sure,
you sharing, and for those of you watching out there, and especially if you're a newbie here, this was not even the tip of the iceberg. You want to find out more about Gord, check him out. His name is Gord Pizer. We call him the Doc here, but his name is Gord Pizer. You can find him on Outdoor Canada magazine. He is the fishing editor of that fine publication. Ontario Tourism uses him as the ambassador, and why wouldn't they, to Ontario fishing. So he blogs there, it seems like every day. I don't know where you find the time to still fish, by the way. But you can go there and check out some of his blogs. They're all archived. You can punch in species and you can punch in patterns. You could whatever you want, and you'll find Gord's work there, as he is also on fishingcanada.com, where you can follow him there. And short of that, be here every Tuesday evening, and we'll see if we can snag him
The one thing I will say for all those walleye guys out there, Ange and Pete, is that tomorrow, I did get so many emails from folks recently about having trouble catching walleye. Tomorrow's blog that's going to go up on outdoorcanada.ca is on walleye on Shield, Northern Ontario, Central Ontario type lakes. So if you're into walleye, guys, check it out tomorrow. It'll be up.
Perfect. Well said, Gordon.
My friend, go tell Lynn not to be upset with you. It's not
I'm going to be banished to the porch now.
I do not want to be you right now, Gord. Oh boy.
Take care, brother. We'll talk to you soon. Wow, that was some pretty extraordinary stuff.
That was good. I mean, I think you can see from all the comments too that Gord is very well loved and by the audience. They just love listening to him. I mean, just like you and I. Listen to people here that are watching us. Ange and I suck it up just like you guys do. I'm telling you right now, it is so cool to hear. I mean, we work in the fishing industry, and just to hear this guy that's so passionate and so knowledgeable about fishing, it's awesome.
Some of the most memorable moments in my career, and I know you'll agree with this, Pete, have been when we've been blessed with an opportunity to sit with a bunch of really knowledgeable anglers, and we're off the beaten path, and it's just a very enclosed setting, and there's just that 4, 5, 6 of us, and it just starts going. The stuff starts coming out, and I often, when I'm in those situations, I look around and I say, my God, these guys are as interested as I am in all of this stuff, right? Because you can't get enough of it.
And it's like a tennis match. They give you something, you hit it back to them, and they hit it back to you. It's like it just keeps going. It's so awesome, right?
And what's the key? And this is not a slight against younger anglers, believe me, because there's some phenomenal young anglers. In fact, there's a few young anglers that can whip our butts every day of the week on any body of water.
Oh, yeah.
However, the significant point I want to make is that people like Gordy, and to some extent Pete and I, and all the other anglers that you listen to and read, it's experience. All we have is time that we have spent on the water. So everything that Gord says, he says because he has done his field work. He has spent enough time doing the wrong things to know what the right things are. And that's really what an experienced angler is. He's taken all the guessing game out of it because he has spent all that downtime not producing, and he doesn't do that very often anymore. He just goes back to the stuff that produces all the time, and that's the pattern. That's what we talk about here regularly.
Yeah, so. For sure. It's all about learning, right? Every time I go fishing, number one, I want to catch fish for my pleasure and fun. It's a great little feeling of doing that. We all know that one. But the other thing is, if I can learn one little tidbit that day, that goes a long way for the rest of my life. So.
Knowledge is power, says Paul. Absolutely.
Yeah, Wally. Yeah.
Okay, so we burned up pretty much our whole show. We have a lot of stuff that we want to still do. We wanted to share with you. We told you that every week we were going to go back into the archives and pull out some Outdoor Journal television stuff, namely an episode that we are going to show you some behind-the-scenes things that never made it to the actual airing of the program, because most of the cases back then when we were airing Outdoor Journal, some of the things that are acceptable today just were not acceptable then. So a lot of the good stuff never made it to air.
Yep.
This week's is no exception to that. Maybe you want to set it up, Pete?
Yeah, we were this shoot was really unique in that we were in Churchill, Manitoba during the wintertime, and we were involved with we were going to shoot the polar bear migration. The polar bears in Churchill, especially, it's a small community, but there's a lot of polar bears all around the community. And one of the biggest problems they have in this community is polar bears walking into town. There's people living here, and polar bears and people don't mix very well. So they have a whole system going on there. Their Ministry of Natural Resources, I'm not sure what it's called in Manitoba, but you get the idea.
DNR.
Yeah, so the District of Natural Resources, anyways, division, they take care of these polar bears. So what happens when they come in to the town, either they will come by, tranquilize them, take them with a big fish net, basically a hanging net from a helicopter, and drop them miles upon miles away, or they have a polar bear jail there where it's a containment center where they take these bears and they will put them in overnight and for a few days when they can't fly them out until they can fly them out. And they feed them. They have a little bit of seal meat in there when they first get in there, just the bare minimum in order to get them on their way. They're very strict on keeping these bears 100% safe. Let's just say that they treat their bears better than Ange and I treat our fish when we go live release fishing. I mean, everything is about safety. They put a lot of money into it. They put a lot of science into it. So in this trip, we did everything. We went out in the tundra. We went into the town. We watched all this kind of stuff. But part of that was in this bear jail, they didn't allow any TV cameras. One thing about it is they did not allow anybody, anywhere, anytime to shoot this. So we said, can we shoot some of it just for our own use? And they said, yeah, you know what, as long as you promise us, and we didn't air it. But today we get to see some of that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure what the first shot is, but I know it's on that shoot. So maybe Mikey can just roll that stuff for us and get a look.
Woo! So what happens here now, Larry?
Basically, this is our holding facility. There's 23 individual cells inside D20, so we got room for 23 bears.
Well, let's put her to bed.
Okay.
In you go.
That guy's back there is a big guy, isn't he? Yeah. We've got some big ones in here. Yeah, the problem is we kind of pick and choose towards the end here. Now we're starting to get large males.
Yeah.
Like 700-800 pounds or so. What we're doing is we're kind of stuffing them in the back, because when you start putting 800-pound bears underneath the helicopter.
Bit of a problem. One at a time, right? One at a time.
Basically what they're doing is I'm picking and choosing the smaller ones so we can fly 3 bears out at a time versus, you know, 1 or 2.
At this time of year, very
docile, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's actually pretty quiet in here considering we've got about 25 bears in here.
No kidding.
We've got 25 bears in here right now.
They came to, everybody was happy and ready to be airlifted out of here.
Yeah.
Flying first class.
How cool is that? Well, that's great memories there, isn't it?
So what you just saw were clips that were not broadcast. They weren't produced into the episode because we had agreed. And the reason that they didn't allow cameras in polar bear jail, by the way, up until that point, we were the only crew that was ever allowed in polar bear jail in Churchill, Manitoba, ever. Out front, which we didn't show you, all of the other, CBC, CTV, all of the big network crews had little stations set up outside of the gated area where polar bear jail is, and they would shoot from outside, shooting the trucks going in with these bears. So we were very privileged to be the only ones to ever go. I don't know to this day if it's still there, whether they allow cameras or not. But we were, at that point, the only ones. And there's a long story as to how that happened. I won't bore you with the details on it. But I wanted to just mention a couple things. Pete said that they're fed some seal meat at the beginning of that whole operation, but no food during the jail period. They allow them snow for instead of water, but they give them nothing that would make them feel happy about being there. Yeah. And then they airlift these bears. And by the way, these are delinquent bears. Most of the bears that are tranquilized during this period in Churchill are moved without going to jail. However, these are repeat offenders, because a lot of the bears, they have a program where they'll move them a certain distance the first time. They mark the bears. If the bear comes back a second time into town, they'll move him again. And then the third time, that's when he goes to jail. And then they move them way out into the ice floes that there's just no way that bear could ever make it back. So there's a whole process about going to jail. It's not all bears go to jail, just delinquent bears. And we weren't able to show that during the actual episode. You will see the episode in its entirety on our, I believe, on our YouTube channel.
Coming up soon.
It's on after this airs, I believe.
I don't know how long. Well, Mikey can probably let us in on that, or they'll put a little post on there. But it's not going to be long for sure.
So we spent 7 days with these officers, these DNR officers, and by the way, each and every one of those men have devoted, and I say men because unfortunately there were no women on this crew. This was an all-male crew. Yep. They have devoted their entire life in helping these animals make it through this very crucial period. And this is when the ice floes start forming up in the Arctic. And Churchill was placed right in the middle of the migration route for polar bears in that area to get out to the ice floes when it's time to go out there and start feeding. And so for 100 years, the bears have been forced through the village, which is now a town. And so it causes problems. So these officers spend their entire life looking after these bears and moving them safely. And they treat these bears with such incredible care. I don't even think a human being could get the care that these animals get. And I'm telling you all this because the next scene that you're going to see is very graphic. It was the first time in 21 years that this had happened at Churchill, involving these DNR members of the team. 21 years, they had a perfect record. What that entails is getting a call from a citizen, a local, saying, there's a bear in my yard. They go out in their pickup trucks, they tranquilize the bear, call in the helicopter, and that bear is either moved out or goes to jail. And this happens on a daily basis in that period of migration. And for 21 years, they had a perfect record. Each one of these officers carries a fully loaded weapon at all times, but they also carry tranquilizer guns, obviously, to tranquilize the bears. And what happened next was a total travesty, certainly to us, because we had never been exposed to anything like this before. But to those officers, of which there were 6 on that team, I will tell you this, and there's no embarrassment in telling you this, every single one of those 6 officers, when it was over, they were crying like little kids at what happened. So brace yourself. This is very graphic. If you can't deal with this kind of stuff, I would strongly suggest that you turn us off right now. For the rest of you, have a look.
That is huge. That's a 1,000-pound plus animal. Look at the size of that.
I wish I had that tape ready for me. You got it, man. It's here.
Look at the size of that. Talk about a powerful animal. My God. Oh, he just got him.
Coming at him.
He's coming at him. Oh my God, he just shot him.
Again.
Oh. Oh, he just
Holy
shot him,
fuck.
man.
Again.
No kidding. He was coming right at him, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, big time.
He's bleeding and all that.
Come on, finish
Come on. Oh, man. Give it to him. No. Oh.
Shit, that hurts me. You see that?
Oh, man.
Shot him in the head. You see that? Shoot him in the
Yeah,
head.
yeah. Look, he's still going. Fuck. He's still going.
Damn.
Okay.
Wow, that still kills me to see that. Just still kills me.
So what happened there? We got a call. By the way, we were involved in 14 successful movement of bears in our stay there. 14 animals had been neutralized or tranquilized and moved either to polar bear jail or airlifted to a safe place that they could be released. And Pete, I think we both agree, during those 14 missions, not ever did I feel that there was danger involved for anybody, especially the animal. Never. But what happened this particular night, this bear, the two officers that you saw in the scene, they had moved in. One has a tranquilizer gun, and the other one has a weapon as a backup, as safety. And they moved in, and it was like that bear, the minute that he sensed that they were in his range, that bear just turned around and just headed right for him, and there was no stopping.
They were going to be attacked by that bear, guaranteed, because you didn't even really show. We were closer than what the camera. Well, the camera doesn't show the angle, but when Ange and I were on an angle because we had microphones on, so we weren't right where the cameraman was. And I guarantee you that bear was going to kill one or both of those guys. I mean, he was just because he was now in a confined area, right? That bear, just to let everybody know, that seal meat, that's why that bear was there. He smelt the seal meat and he smelt the other bears, and he was in there snooping around. Because these guys were out looking for bears elsewhere. They got called into the compound area. That's how rare this happened. And that thing was, like Ann said in the video, like 1,000 pounds. It was a massive beast, gorgeous animal. And you heard the F-bomb the guy let out there, the guy that shot him. They were so traumatized. The whole, like Ann says, after that, everyone had a tear in their eyes, and the whole place went silent. I mean, the whole shoot went on a down after that. It was like,
oh my God, it was you could it took about an hour for anybody even to start talking after that.
You people, by the way, are the first to ever see that. We just saw it for the first time about a week ago, and we said, it's about time we aired that. Let's let this is part of the outdoors and all that, and that's the first time that's ever aired in this, aside from this office. Right?
We were. They had originally confiscated the tape with that on there, and we promised not to broadcast it, and we kept it under wraps all this time. But we thought, that was a long time ago, and things are different today, and we just felt like we should share that with you. So there you go. But man, it was insane. The tension you could cut with a knife. Nobody wanted to talk. It was just.
It's one of those things that, like when you go and you see a bad car accident, and you see all that. With Ange and I, it's the same thing as that. We were done for weeks. Like when we come back from that shoot, normally you're high five, and after the footage that we got of polar bears that we've never seen before, we had the greatest shoot of all time. We were on a downer for weeks, honestly.
You'll see if you watch the episode, how close we became, how attached we became to those animals. I mean, every time that we would tranquilize one and move them, and they had cubs, we'd get a chance to carry the cubs to the helicopter, and it was just we became so attached. And to have this as the final piece, hey Pete, it was the wildest thing. This was our final day there, I believe. Final day. I think we left the following day, so it was kind of the end of it, and it was like a script. If anybody wanted to write a dramatic conclusion to a wonderful week, this would have been it.
John Hucker there says, back off, then tranquilize. Remember, John, the guys were in there with tranquilizer guns. Their intent was to tranquilize that bear, get in there, somehow hide behind the boxes, pop him with that dart, and then hopefully he drops down and sleeps. Then they're going to drag him into jail and take him away. That was their intent. When that bear comes at them, you're not going to tranquilize a 1,000-pound polar bear running at you. You can't tranquilize that thing.
No. And by the way, the bear was 960 pounds. The reason that's known is because they brought it in, obviously, and did all of the work on the bear in terms of size and all that. But the bear was donated to a local community, and it fed an entire village.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was 1,000-pound bear. It was crazy.
Couldn't they tranquilize from a chopper? Yeah, you know what? Maybe they could have. I don't know if they want to bring the chopper that close to the bear jail. I mean, you're talking about power lines around. You're talking about right in the town now, too. Right?
So the other thing that you don't really see from that scene, you will see if you go and watch the entire episode, is that most of this episode was shot in minus 50-degree temperatures. In fact, it was so cold, and most of the time the wind and snow was constantly blowing in front of them. I mean, wind gusts that you would blow you over. So these guys really have to get close in order to get that bear tranquilized the safest and quickest way possible. That's the other risk that you run. You know, if you don't tranquilize it properly, what happens then, right? So they have to get close. Every single one of the 14 situations, they were in close, and they've been doing this for eons. They know what they're doing, and to have a 21-year record with absolutely no blemishes speaks volumes for their system.
Oh, yeah.
So if they could have done it, if they could do it an easier way, they probably would. But in this case, and there was a lot of circumstances that you don't see in that piece that really made it even worse, is that the bear was in the compound. That was Polar Bear Jail that you were seeing, that white building. The bear was in a compound. So already the bear is sort of confined, right? And the bear, either Pete says it was seal meat, it was probably a combination of that and the other bears, the female bears inside the jail that he got a sniff of. And when he first sensed that there was a human being within distance, it was the weirdest thing, because we watched it all unfold. It's like he knew immediately that there was only one thing to do at that point, because he turned and leapt and made one big long jump towards him. And I'm telling you, that thing covered 35, 40 feet in that one big step. I don't think these guys had any other option other than what they did. There was no way around it. It was, anyways, good, bad, and different. We thought we would share that with you. You can go to our website or to.
The boy just said that episode is going to air tomorrow. There it goes.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of quick little housekeeping pieces. Don't forget, tomorrow is the draw for the 2.5 Mercury, right?
That's correct, sir. Make sure you get all your ballots in. The boys are going to post the bonus code. Stay tuned to the end of the show for this week's bonus code. Good stuff. So make sure you get that. Obviously, everybody that wants to have a better chance at winning the Merc, stay tuned for that.
I'm going to make a prediction.
Here we go.
There are 3 provinces that have not had a winner yet.
Winner, chicken dinner. Go ahead.
I'm going to predict it's going to be one of them. I'm just saying.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I hope so.
That'd be nice to share it around the country.
Ontario, if it's BC, if it's Alberta, that's fine. But I'm going to predict that we're going to have a winner from an area that's never had one. And don't forget, the boat motor trailer is 2 months away from being done. So it's important, imperative that you get in there each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
On a closing note, we started the program by saying, you know, we acknowledge that some people get a little concerned when they can't get into the site or they can't enter into the contest, and they're genuinely concerned, and I totally agree with them. But what disturbed me a little bit more than that, in this particular case this weekend, was the number of people that attacked the people who were concerned. And that concerns me. You know, we're one big happy family. We're a community. We do this because of the sense of community. I think we should all use that thinking when we're communicating amongst ourselves. For the most part, everybody does a great job. But every once in a while, I see people attacking other people on this site, and there's just no reason in the world for it. If you don't like what we do, if you don't like what the other members are doing, go away. And I mean that in all sincerity. You don't need to hang around if you don't like it. So let's not see any more of that, please. Bad mouthing and using profanity with other people on here. Like, it's just, there's no reason for it. So there.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you. Have I got everything in, gentlemen? Or we?
Just a quick up note. Speaking of bears, we got a cool little new web content of a bear video on our website about a guy that doesn't use a tranquilizer gun. He doesn't use a real gun. He's got a very unique way of scaring off black bears. You might want to check it out. You might like it. You'll probably hate it because people and bears shouldn't be in gun. Blah 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 blah. But check it out. It's pretty interesting. And we also did a piece on, and it's doing really well, is our top 5 baits for lake trout. We just decided to go out of the box. Like Gord said, the season's closing in a couple of days, but that said, this is going to last forever. It's gone really well. It's Andrew's are my absolute favorite picks for lake trout, and it's on the fishingcanada.com site as well. Those are the two newest pieces that are up there you should check out. So
on that note, just like to say that if those of you watched, if you like what we do, please share it with as many folks as you can. Like it, subscribe to it, whatever it is that you need to do to connect with this community. Please do it. The bigger and stronger we get, the more things that we can do together. And there's a lot to come. Trust me.
It's a polite way of telling the dickheads to F off. LOL. I love you, Sean. Rock on, buddy. That's awesome.
Until next week, we will bid you adieu. Thanks for joining us. And remember, go Jays go. They need to pull this out. They need to go to the next round. And we all pray for them. It's going to happen. Trust me on that one.
They were down at for a
I don't want to hear any negatives.
No negatives. They're telling our friends are posting. Our good people are posting scores.
All right. Talk to you next week, folks. Have a great one.
There's always a sense of anticipation when we're hiking in any of these little small lakes. I love this kind of adventure. This is so cool. Whoa. Easy, mama. Fish is nuts. Look at that brook trout. I got him. An Algoma piece of gold. This I highly recommend. Easy. Wow, look at her go crazy now. That is what the Algoma country is made of right there.